This might be the most useful video for you if you are a secondhand seller, so watch this and stick about. I'm going to talk about ways to be smart selling this product. What's going on, everybody? Spencer Line here again. So those who don't know, in 2012 I started my very own vintage and online clothing company called Gulligarms. Last year, sadly, I closed it and reopened it in a new capacity this year, alongside giving value through YouTube, wanting to sort of share what I've learned over the course of the last 12 years doing this business. And today's video, I wanted to talk about being smart in secondhand. So before we start about being smart in secondhand, I just wanted to break down what's not smart, unintelligent moves with secondhand. Two of the biggest ways to not be smart doing secondhand is to be greenwashing or to incorrectly portray a narrative of what it is you're doing. Greenwashing is when you are shouting about doing something sustainable, but actually it is not, and pushing a different narrative that isn't accurate, maybe just not talking to the right audience that reflects the product they're looking at. And I think that out of most industries, the secondhand economy of things has to be taken with a smart approach because of the stigma that it has from a lot of people who aren't curious by it, in the sense of what it actually is that you're dealing with. If it's secondhand, typically it's used, pre-owned, pre-loved, whatever under that blanket. It is something that somebody else has owned before. But see, for me, there's an empowering part of the fact that it's been owned before. And I use that and have used that to leverage a smart point with what I do. So let's just look at this question about being smart in secondhand and what that actually entails for you to do. Secondhand is a sustainable approach to recycling, repurposing, and reusing stuff that's already here on this planet. And the stigma that a lot of people have about secondhand is that it's used, dirty, damaged goods of whatever topic and brand it is, and they don't want anything to do with it. Partly because everything they own is secondhand, and maybe they wouldn't sell products either. The two biggest points that sit here are reinforcing the need for the sustainability and the greener economy, and trying your best to chip away at the stigma of secondhand that those that buy new have. It might also not be people that just buy new. It could be people who've had bad experiences buying secondhand. We always have to remember that any person that we are potentially going to sell to may have had X, Y, Z experience before that may affect their way that they communicate with this situation. We just need to look at the points, the sustainability, and also the fact that there's a big stigma, and understand how we can infiltrate the positives and sort of deplete the negatives out of the situation. So every single negative point that you could have around your product line or your business model, you can counteract with some sort of marketing, some sort of smart approach to reinforce it in a positive light. Let's say one of the stigma points is that used clothing is all manky and it's all dirty. A smart approach with secondhand would be to reinforce that all your items are pre-loved products that have been washed and dried and restored to the best of your ability, and the price reflects that picture, that image, that quality. Even though that point hasn't been directed to you, that's a narrative point that is seen by some people, and maybe more people than you realize. So if you counteract that by giving the information somebody like that would think, you help yourself in the long run. A smart way with secondhand as well in terms of selling is to remember the sustainable point, but only reinforce it if it's something that you actually practice. Buying your goods, you might do that in a sustainable fashion, and if it is sustainable, you can reinforce it. Maybe you use sustainable mail bags like these. We have sustainable mail bags, so as a result, we will tell you that that's what we use. Because there's a super fine line with talking and pushing and reinforcing the sustainable angle, but also executing those points yourself. You can only say the good perks of sustainability through secondhand if it is something that you genuinely and honestly practice or believe. Because it's very easy for a lot of people to see between the lines of when somebody is talking about something that they may not actually practice. So looking at being smart in secondhand is really about acknowledging all the stigma points and all the negatives that somebody could look at for it, whilst at the same time understanding all the real good positives that you actually are associated with. If your process for sourcing is sustainable, if the way that you sell items is sustainable, talk about them and use the ways to reinforce it in the right way. But essentially, guys, the best ways to be smart selling secondhand is to focus on those 2 points and understand how you can infiltrate them into the business that you're working through. And almost not overcomplicate things. You can kind of simplify those 2 points. Like if you just focused on the stigma of secondhand that people have and think about every single list, write 10 individual questions of what could be a stigma that people would have with secondhand. It's used, it's manky, people are just selling clothes they've wore, and then each point counteract it with, this is something that I could mention as a result of that, this is what I can say about that, this is what I can say about that. And most of the time you can kind of counteract every negative from that with a positive that you actually probably do. Short and sweet one on this, guys. Please feel free to drop a comment if you want me to elaborate on any topic you've seen before. I can always revisit other previous conversations, and I'm here to be a one-day video type of guy where we just break down little bits of information about fashion, business, sustainability, economics, business, whatever it is, whatever I'm talking about right now, that is what we're just going to keep doing. As always, guys, stay safe, stay sustainable, stay doing you, and keep trusting that process, because we're going that way. We're not going that way. We're going to go forward, all steam ahead.